Now we are going to be looking into powers. There are 10 rules you need to know when it comes to powers. First rule is told us to add the powers. So we add 5 and 3 together like that. So something like this. 5 add 3 is 8. So our final answer is 7 to the power of 8. Now I want you to do this by yourself. So pause this video and start answering these questions. Okay, so let's do part A. So you've got 3 to the power of 6 times by 3 to the power of 4. Well, the bases stay the same, and all we need to do is 6 plus 4. 6 plus 4 is 10, so our answer is 3 to the power of 10. This question here. So we have e to the power of 4 times by e to the power of 7. So e will stay the same, the base will stay the same, and then we've got 4 plus 7. 4 plus 7 is 11, so our final answer is e to the power of 11. Now for this bit, we have 10 to the power of 5 times by 10 to the power of minus 3. So our base stays the same, and we do 5 plus minus 3. Do you remember what the rules were when we have a plus and a minus? A plus and a minus makes a minus, so we are doing 10 and then 5 minus 3, and 5 minus 3 is 2, so our answer is 10 squared. So the next rule is that if you divide numbers with the same base, you subtract the powers. So for this instance here, we have 7 to the power of 5 divided by 7 to the power of 3. First of all, we see that they have the same base. We have a 7 and a 7 here. So the 7 will stay the same. And when we divide powers, and when we divide numbers with the same base, you subtract the powers. So we do 5 take away 3, and that will get us 7 squared. Now I want you to try this by yourself. So pause this video. Okay, so let's do part A. So we have f as the base is going to stay the same. So we have f to the power of 9 divided by f to the power of 5. So we do 9 take away 5, which we get f to the power of 4. This instance here, we have 9, then we do 12 minus 4, and if you remember, 2 negatives, so minus and a minus makes a plus. So essentially we're doing 12 plus 4, which we get as 16. For this instance here, 4 stays the same, and we do 7 take away 3. 7 take away 3 is 4, so we have 4 to the power of 4. Third rule is that if you raise a power to another power, you multiply the powers. So what this means is when you have a brackets here, so 7 to the power of 5 in brackets, and outside the brackets is this power of 3. We do 5 times by 3. So we do 7, stays the same, the base, and then we do 5 times by 3, which is 15. So our answer is 7 to the power of 15. Fourth rule is anything to the power of 1 is just itself. So x, where x is any number to the power of 1, is equal to x. So for this example here, 7 to the power of 1 is equal to 7, and it can be any number here. So For this, we have 145,678 to the power of 1 is equal to itself here. The fifth rule you need to know is that any number to the power of 0 is 1. So any number x, so x can be any number to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So 7 to the power of 0 is equal to 1. The sixth rule you need to know is that 1 to any power is still just 1. The seventh rule you need to know is that a power of -1 gives the reciprocal. So 7 to the power of -1 is equal to 1 over 7. So if you know that 7 is the same thing as 7 over 1. So what this -1 is doing is that this 7 is going down here, and then this 1 is going up here. So for this instance here, 8 to the power of -2. So this minus thing here. So 8 is the same thing as 8 over 1. And then if we bring this 8 down here and this 1 up here to get 1 over 8. And then we need to do the square. So 1 over 8 squared is the same thing as 1 over 64. Now the eighth rule is about fractional powers. So a power to the half is equal to square root. A power to the third is equal to cube root. A power to the fourth is equal to fourth root. So what is power to the 1/5? And that is the fifth root. And if the power was 1/6, then it will be sixth root, and so on and so forth. So for this example here, 25 to the power of a half is the same thing as square root of 25, which is 5. 64 to the power of a third is the same thing as cube root of 64, which is 4. And 81 to the power of a fourth is the same thing as fourth root of 81, which is 3. Now, I want you to try this yourself. Okay, so 216 to the power of a third is the same thing as cube root of 216, and that is 6. 49 to the power of a half is the same thing as square root of 49, which is equal to 7. And then cube root of 125 is the same thing as, sorry, I already said the answer, but cube root, so this is the same thing as cube root of 125, which is 5. We're nearly there, guys. So fractions. So for fractions, apply the power to both the top and the bottom. So this means that if we had 8 over 5 in brackets and then we had the square outside, we're squaring both the 8 and the 5 to get 8 squared over 5 squared, which is the same thing as 64 over 25. So I want you to do this by yourself. Okay, so u over v in brackets, and then you have the 7 up here. So it's u to the power of 7 and v to the power of 7. So that is 3 cubed over 7 cubed. 3 cubed is 27, and then 7 cubed is 343. Now the last and final rule you need to know is the two-stage fractional powers. So if we have something like this, 64 to the power of 5 over 6, we split the fraction into a root and power. So what I'm saying is that 64 to the power of 5 over 6 is the same thing as 64, and then the power is 1 over 6, 1/6, times by 5, like that. And the first thing we need to do is do the root first. So we're going to do this 1 over 6 first. 64 to the power of 1 over 6 is the same thing as 6th root of 64, and that is 2. And then 2 to the power of 5, which is 32. Like so. Now I want you to do this by yourself. Same thing, so we do the root first. We have a third, so 125 to the power of a third, that is 5. And then we do 5 squared, which is 25. For part B, we do 81 to the power of a fourth, which is 3. And then we do 3 cubed, which is 27. We find the cube root of 216, which is 6, and then we square it to get 36. Now we're going to go over some exam style questions. So this question says, write square root of 5 to the power of 3 divided by 5 to the power of minus 5 in the simplified index form. To do this, we first look at this first. Look at inside here. So we have 5 to the power of 3 divided by 5 to the power of minus 5. And if you remember, when we have two powers and they have the same base, 5 and 5, we subtract the powers. So we do 3 minus 5. And if you remember, 2 minuses makes a plus. So this simplifies into 3 plus 5, which we get as 8. So you get square root 5 and then to the power of 8. But then do you remember that square root is the same thing as a half, right, in powers? So we get 5 to the power of 8 times by a half, which we then get as 5 to the power of 4. Now I want you to do these two exam questions yourself. Okay, so for part A, if you remember our rule about fractions here and powers on the outside, so we do square root of 9 and square root of 4 to get 3 and 2. What we're going to do first is we're going to take this minus out first. And we're just going to focus on this 2 over 3. And if you remember, we do the root first before we do the power. So we do cube root of 64, which is 4, and then we square it to get 16. Now we bring the power back, the negative power back, to get 16 to the minus 1. And if you remember, 16 to the minus 1, so 16 is the same thing as 16 over 1. And when we have a negative power, we do the reciprocal. So the 16 will go down here and the 1 will go up here to get 1 over 16. Now, this is a bit of a harder question, but it is an exam question, so I want you to try and do this yourself. Okay, so to work this out, we're going to ignore the root first. So we're going to find out what 8 is equal to 2. So 2 to the power of what makes 8. And if we go up our 2 times table, so 2 times 1, so 2 to the power of 1 is 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 4, so 2 times 2. And 2 times 2 times 2, so 2 to the power of 3 is equal to 8. So 2 to the power of 3 is equal to 8. Then we add this square root. So square root is the same thing as the half in power. So all we need to do is do 3 times by a half to get 2 to the power of 3 over 2.